We're going to be recording this. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Again, if you need Spanish, feel free to click on Spanish. Tonight, your panelists. Your panelists will be myself, Mike LaFleur, and Miss Mekalova. Miss Mekalova will be presenting. Miss Mekalova, if you want to change it over to the slide, your regular slideshow will be good to go. And then hit present up in the corner. Not share, present. There we go. So now how this will work is Ms. Mekalova will start her presentation. If you have questions, please type them into the chat, right? And then if it's just a question that's mostly for one person, I'll type an answer back into the right then and there into chat. If it's something that comes a lot, or I think everybody should hear, I'll interrupt the presentation and we'll answer it. You can't hear me? Is anybody else not hearing me? Okay, good. That scared me. Okay. All right. So, Ms. Mekalova?
Yep.
You are good to start, and I will monitor the chat.
Okay. Wonderful. So before I go to the presentation, I want you to make sure that you know who your counselors are. We break our caseload by alpha, and you see who is handling what letters, and their contact information. And in case you have any further questions about who your counselor is, or if you're new, please contact Ms. Pam Pewitt at 243-2414. So today we are going through a couple of things. We will just briefly review graduation requirements. We'll talk about different post-secondary options. We will focus more in depth into college requirements and talk about CSUs, UCs, and private schools. Then discuss how to create a college list. And in the end, I will give you some resources that we're using, online resources. Graduation requirements. To graduate from high school in this district, a student has to collect 230 credits. Basically, every year, the magic number is 60. 60 times 4 years would be 240. You're required to have 230, so many of our seniors are having a slightly lighter load, 4 or 5 classes. In addition to 230 credits, seniors have to complete 20 hours of community service. Juniors can start submitting this information as well. Information about community service is available in Google Classroom for each grade. So if they are ready with this information, they can look at the paperwork and at the list of options, and if they're done, submit that to their counselor. High school versus college requirements. There are 2 columns. They look somewhat the same and somewhat different. So when somebody is going to high school and wants to graduate, they worry. It's like a big supermarket. They go to a supermarket and they start putting items in their basket. When they go to a cash register, you need to collect 230 credits. If a person got an F, he has to put an item back on the shelf. This number 230 is comprised of 30 credits in history, 40 credits in English, and you can go all the way and it'll total 230. Whether it's 230, 250, 280, it doesn't really matter for colleges. And for us, the number is 230. So some kids who are preoccupied with 7 classes because they want to collect more credits, colleges don't really care about it. On the right-hand side, you see college requirements. Colleges care about specific classes, academic classes. These classes are called A through G classes. And in every subject area, colleges are required to have a certain amount of years, the minimum of certain amount of years for this category. So you can see history is 2 years. English is the only subject that is required for 4 years. If you look at math, for high school, we have 20 credits, which converts to 2 years. For a state school, for example, it's 3 years, and I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And for highly selective school, it would be maxing out and collecting 4 years. So when a kid comes to our office and says, how many credits of math do I need? Our response is, it depends. Oh, what are you looking at after high school? If it's community college or going to a workforce, then it's the minimum of 20 credits. If it's a highly selective school, then you max out and you do 4 years of math. It's important that you get a grade of C in all A through G classes. If a student got a D in A through G, not in PE, not in practical art, but in classes that you see on your chart, he has to repeat a class for state schools, for California schools. So these are A through G categories. So if somebody failed a class, there are multiple ways of making it up. You have to remember that D is a passing grade for high school. Basically, D equals diploma. C is a passing grade for college. C plus does not equal B minus. C is a C, B is a B. So there's absolutely no room for Fs. When a kid gets an F, he's losing 5 credits on a class per semester, and he has to repeat that class. If a kid is credit deficient, there are several ways to remediate those classes. There's summer school, if we're offering one, hopefully we will. There's night school for juniors and seniors. When outside of Wilcox, they're attending night school twice a week. And there's an option that is a paid option. You have to pay for a class, but you can do it from the convenience of your home. And these are usually BYU classes. So these are all the post-secondary options. This pretty much covers everything. So I will go backwards. When a kid wants to go straight into the workforce and pursue work opportunities, he can do that. If he can't afford to go to school, if he needs to support his family, there's nothing wrong with that. He can go to military, and if he does a good service, military might pay for his education or partially for his education. Some kids choose to go to vocational, technical, or apprenticeship programs. Some of those programs are hidden gems. They're paid really well. When the kid is done, the kids are not assuming any debt. They have a good career in place, a well-paying career like electrician, plumbers, carpenters. Some of these programs are very selective, but some of them are really solid and good and should not be disregarded. Community college path is becoming a more in-demand path in light of COVID. I noticed that some of my kids were reluctant to travel. They don't want to take online classes. They want a full-blown college experience. And they changed their mind. Instead of going to a 4-year, they decided to go to a community college to pursue their GE there and then transfer to a 4-year school, and they would get a degree, from a college of their choice, 4-year college. And the last option is a 4-year college or university. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. If a kid is bound for a 4-year college, these are the things that he has to keep in mind. He needs to focus on A through G classes. If he fails this class, it's not counted and it has to be repeated if the kid got anything below D. GPA requirements in A through G classes. For the UC system, the minimum is 3.0 GPA. For CSU, the minimum is 2.0. And for private school, it varies. Many feel that private schools are super selective. Some are, and some schools are much less selective. They're probably less known, but still provide good, solid education. GPAs that I mentioned a second ago would make you eligible for the schools, but it doesn't mean that you would be selected. So once in a while, I have a kid with 2.3 or 2.5 that says, oh, I'm getting to college. So he needs to realize that the more selective a school is, the higher GPA is required. So selection and actual eligibility are two different things. SAT or ACT scores, I will talk about that briefly in a moment. Because of COVID restrictions, UCs and CSUs are not requiring these tests for the upcoming admission cycle, although 25 other states are. So when somebody is asking, do I need to take SAT or ACT? The answer is it depends. If it's strictly California schools, UCs and CSUs, you might get away with that. And many private schools are becoming test optional. But if you're planning to travel outside of the state, that might not be the case. And again, I would have a slide devoted to that, kind of Q&As on testing. And this information, this PowerPoint would be available for you after the meeting. So college testing 2020, should I still take the SAT or ACT? Again, UCs and CSUs are not requiring. In fact, they don't even have the capacity to accept scores for this admission cycle. If you take it, do I have to submit my score? No, you don't have to. It's completely up to you. You decide whether to submit it or not. If you feel that the score is not high enough, you hold on and you don't do that. If you don't take SAT or ACT, will it hurt your application? If the college does not require the test, then no, it won't hurt anything. But keep in mind that without test scores, other parts of your application are becoming more important. Your GPA, your college essay, your award, your achievements. So they will start carrying more weight than SAT. And again, I'm talking about this upcoming admission cycle because things might change in a year. And what are the benefits of still taking SAT or ACT? Again, there are 25 states that do require SAT and ACT. And if the school of your kid's choice would be one of them, then that would be a mandatory thing. Some of the considerations, if your kid is college bound, rigorous academic curriculum. Some kids choose to go overboard with AP classes. They're taking 6 classes and they're overwhelmed. It's difficult for them. They say that one particular class takes all of their time, compromising other classes. So that's probably one extreme, as opposed to another extreme when you hear from a kid who says, I don't want to take any AP classes. I want to have a sure A in a regular class. So this is not going to fly because colleges are looking for rigor. They want to make sure that a high school kid is prepared for college level work. And in that sense, they look very favorably at AP and honors classes. In terms of AP and honors, for UCs and CSUs, they're restricted to 10th and 11th grade to get an extra point on your GPA, which converts to 4-year classes. Again, this is only for UCs and CSUs, 4-year-long classes, which is 8 semesters. For private schools, they're looking holistically at everything from 9th to 12th grade. So again, if somebody is asking if there are any restrictions, the response is it depends based on what school or what system you're going to pursue. In-state colleges won't accept D's and F in any required classes. And again, required classes are A through G classes. In terms of math, the minimum math class that your child has to take if he's considering college is Algebra 2. And that would equate to 3 years of math in high school. Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. After that, it's his choice. If he is comfortable taking more advanced math, that it would be beneficial. If not, he can stop. In terms of foreign language, the bare minimum foreign language requirement is 2 years for all schools, but colleges like to see that you continue with foreign languages. It shows that you're looking at things holistically, that you're not one-sided person. And if your kid is really succeeding in foreign language, then it would be lovely if he continues even to an AP level. It's not mandatory, it's not required, so it's kind of a one-by-one situation, but if he's good at foreign language, it would be a big plus for him. A few words about types of colleges and universities. In California, it's a 2-tier system. Kind of a lower tier is a CSU system that stands for California State University. There are 23 schools. Some are really big. Some are selective, like Cal Poly. They're CSU, they're within the CSU system, but it's a UC caliber school. Top 25% of kids are going to a CSU system. San Jose State and San Diego State are on a bigger side. Humboldt State would be a smaller campus. The higher tier state school would be UC system, University of California system. And I gave you some examples. They're probably changing every year. Berkeley, 4.2 to 4.4 GPA, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara. Davis is a pretty selective school as well. Besides public schools, we also have private schools. Again, some private schools are super selective, like Stanford, University of Southern California, Santa Clara, as opposed to others are very reasonable, and they're offering a lot of scholarships to their kids, understanding that the tuition is pretty expensive. So I don't want you to disregard those schools as well. And the last option is to go out of state. Out of state, there would be two choices. State schools in a different state or private school. For private school, tuition would be the same for everybody. But if you're an out-of-state school, out-of-state resident, then you would pay a higher tuition fee. So this is something to keep in mind as well, even though it might be a school in a neighboring state, and it's a state school, it still might be pricey because you're a non-resident. College requirements. Varies from system to system. I put a little formula for you. Hopefully you can remember. For CSU system, it's your grades, which you can check on your child transcript, plus test scores. Again, this year is not very common because of COVID. Some schools are test optional for this year, but again, it might change. So this information might change as well. But in the past, that's what it used to be. Grades plus test scores for CSU system. For UC, it's very similar, grades plus test scores plus personal statements. And I will talk about that in a moment. And for private schools, it's grades plus test scores plus personal statement and plus a letter of recommendation. So before your kid starts asking a counselor or a teacher for a letter of recommendation, he has to have a clear idea of where he is applying. If he is thinking about selective UC schools and Cal Poly, he does not need to ask for a letter of recommendation. And some do that, and they do a personal statement for CSU schools or letters of rec for UCs, and it's a work that is done for nothing. California State University system, as I mentioned, 23 campuses. Humboldt is in the north, San Diego is in the south. Some local schools, San Jose State, San Francisco State, CSU Monterey Bay, and CSU East Bay. Large versus small campuses, I will talk about that in a moment, how and why that matters. San Jose State is a large school. Sonoma State would be of a smaller caliber, much cozier for a kid who prefers more of a one-on-one or smaller group environment. If your kid is choosing to apply to Cal State, he would apply through Cal State Apply system. Deadline is from October to November 30th, although in the bulletin that I just received, they extended the deadline until mid-December. We encourage kids to apply before Thanksgiving, though, because the system has a tendency to crash and kids start freaking out if they procrastinate and do it the last moment, and it produces tons of unneeded stress. When your child is applying to a CSU or UC system, he is self-reporting all the academic information. We don't need to send a transcript to school. Transcript would be sent by a kid himself in the end of his senior year through a system called Parchment. We talk to children about that. how to create an account, and how to order a transcript from Parchment. They do it themselves. I often get requests to send a final transcript to a UC or CSU system. I don't do that. Your child can do that. This is quite different than private schools, but we'll talk about privates in a moment. So I talked about eligibility and selection. So a lower GPA ensures that you're eligible to apply, but whether you would be selected, that's a different story. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, impacted campuses or majors. You can Google that. If you Google impacted programs matrix for a particular year, you will get that chart. So what it does, and this applies only to CSUs, it has nothing to do with UCs or private schools. You can look horizontally, you look at all CSU campuses, 23 schools, and vertically, you're looking at all main majors. So if you look at biology, for example, if the kid says that I really want to consider a degree in health, and biology probably would be my major, but it's very hard, it's highly competitive to get there, then this might be a good approach, kind of backwards. Let's just look at schools where biology is not impacted. And when I'm looking at biology and you see O, that means open. East Bay is a neighboring campus where biology is not impacted, and that means that it would be easier to get into that discipline that in San Jose State. You see that some campuses have I's, which means impacted all across. They're impacted campus-wide, as opposed to some that are impacted only in certain disciplines. So this is also a good tool to look at if you want to strategize and kind of not to put all your eggs in one basket and bet on one particular school. Few words about UC system, prestigious, highly selective, popular system. There are 9 campuses in the state. San Francisco State is a graduate school only. You can apply for an undergrad degree. Davis is becoming extremely popular as well. San Diego is in the south, another popular school. A local campus is UC Santa Cruz. And again, some campuses are big, like UCLA, as opposed to Merced, which is a much smaller campus. And again, your transcripts are not required when your kid applies to this school in November. But it is required in the end of the senior year, and your child is submitting his transcript himself through Parchment, the same as for CSU. So a few words about personal statement. So UCs are taking it a little bit further. It's your GPA and your SAT scores, again, not for this year, but possibly for the next year, and it's your personal statement. They're giving you an option of 8 topics. Your child can select 4 out of the 8, whichever resonates with him the most. It could be leadership, it could be his creative abilities, it could be his talents, it could be his challenges in life. So he selects 4. And he writes on this personal insight questions. One thing to keep in mind is that each response is limited to the maximum of 350 words. And some are very elaborative, and they write a lot, and they would have to substantially shrink that response. Private colleges, that's a very different beast. So they're looking at your child from a holistic lens. The way I see that, they're kind of looking at the primary factors first, being academic records, which is your child's GPA, his SATs, if they come back. Again, some schools are test optional for this year, and general trends. You know, the child started with a regular math, then he took honors, algebra 2, then he continued to an AP calculus class, for example. The question that college answers with academic records is, will you succeed academically on my campus, which is critically important. You are basically prepared for college level work. And the purpose of testing or test scores, how true is your academic record? You say that you're this great kid, kind of prove that to me. Although more and more colleges are turning away to becoming test optional, but the ones that are not, that's what they're trying to accomplish. And the second lens, secondary factors that colleges are looking at are activities. What will you contribute to my campus? Colleges don't want to get just bookworms, just a bright kid who really doesn't contribute much. They want to make their campus vibrant and live, and they want to make sure that your child will bring that with him. So activities are really important for private schools. And as for an essay, are you the right fit for my campus? This is a chance for your child to really stand away from a piece of paper so they feel the person, so they know exactly who is coming to their campus, and they know, yes, we're looking for this particular kid, for example, who would think outside of the box, not just who is a great test taker. And in the end, teacher recommendation kind of validates all of the above. That's why it's important that your child selects people who really know him well and who can attest to all of this stuff. It's not uncommon that, sometimes a child approaches you and you don't know a kid much and they expect a letter of recommendation. So I usually say, get to know your counselor, make your counselor your friend, so he has some really good, solid things to say. Because if I have nothing much to say, then it becomes just a constatation of fact, academic records, certain classes. And I think colleges are looking beyond that. They want to see a human.
So Ms. Mekalova, real quick,
Sure.
Parents realize that your counselor does not write a teacher recommendation. We write a separate letter. And if you are applying to private schools, your counselor will need to write you a letter. So what she said about getting to know your counselor is the most important thing, because we will be writing a letter on you. And it's not the teacher one. You'll need teacher and counselor. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. Thank you. So private schools, most of the private schools are using Common App to apply. Some are using a different platform like Send.edu or Coalition, but the vast majority are using Common App. We used to apply for kids through Naviance, through eDocs, and as of this year, we're switching back to Common App, which is a good thing. Deadlines really vary from school to school. Private schools require secondary school report. You can see what it consists of. They are in fact looking for letters of recommendation. And again, like Mr. LaFleur said, it's 2 letters from teachers that are valuable, because teachers know your kids really well. They know their work ethics. They see them in class every day. Counselors don't have that luxury. So if a kid never communicates with the counselor and he's flying low on his radar and he's doing just what's asked of him, we don't know a kid that well. But we do write another letter only for private schools. Essay, which is super important. Supplements. Different colleges ask for different supplements. They're often overlooked, so don't disregard them. They would provide important piece of information for schools. And for financial aid purposes, many schools are using CSS profile, and deadlines vary. You have to check with each individual school on that. College search strategies. It's not uncommon that kids are applying random to the same majors, to the same schools, only because they heard the name, or it sounds fancy, or it's a brand name school. I personally, I'm a college match person, college fit, not a college brand. I have 2 kids. They were super happy in their schools. And to me as a mother, it's very important that your child feels comfortable in that school. And if he does, that means that he's in the right place. His heart is in the right place, and academics follow. So when we all start talking to kids about college search, we emphasize location. When we presented in classes last year, many kids don't realize what that means. They want to be independent. How independent do you want to be? Do you want to be 6 hours by car from your mom, 6 hours by plane? You want to do your laundry by yourself? You will get all of that. If you get sick, you'll be by yourself and you'll be visiting your mama in Christmas time. And many kids go, oh, never thought of that. So this is something to consider. And in addition, your personal preferences. Do you like cold or hot or in the mountains? But primarily the support system, being close to your family, you can disregard that. Size, big and small schools really vary in the way they disseminate information. If it's a small school, they have a lot of their classes that are seminar-based. There's a lot of conversation, talking. You get to know your professor. It's not uncommon that you might call your professor to discuss things further. This is not common for big schools when the primary format of delivering information is lecturing. And then in a UC system, you see a little dot and 300 people in a room, and that dot is your professor. It actually might not be a professor. It could be a TA. So this is something else to consider. Major. If a kid is telling me that he wants to major in biomedical engineering and nothing else because he wants to be really marketable and he likes all three of these elements, it's offered at Berkeley, but it would not be offered in a different school. So are you willing to compromise biomedical engineering for something else, for biology, for example? So that's another important thing. So you start talking to your child, and we do the same thing, the importance of a college search criteria. And we have a tool that is devoted to that, and I would show you that tool in a moment. Then ideally, you start researching colleges. When COVID is over, there would be in-person visits. Right now, it's virtual visits, fairs, guides, online research, talking to people. Get to know that school. You will spend 4 years of your life in that school. And I usually say that college is a bridge. It'll take you somewhere, but you want to make sure that you want to be in that place, that it's not a foreign place to you and everything feels awkward and it's not your school. And in the meantime, your parents are paying for that education. We encourage kids to finalize college list by November 1st, so they're not freaking out, that they have time to think things through. Some do that, some procrastinate and wait till the very last moment, and they pay the price. Some kids choose to have a huge college list. We usually discourage that. We feel that the healthy number of schools to apply would be 10, 12, maybe 15. Colleges would be super happy to get your application fee. You know, it's business. Stanford is what, $95, $100 for an application from each person? That's a lucrative business. Everybody apply, and it boosts my yield rate. But is that the right strategy for you? When you start creating a college list, when you have your college list, a good, wise strategy is start clustering your colleges in 3 groups. The most important group is your match group. That means that GPA and SAT or ACT, if it's required, is pretty much to what your kid is offering. And this should be the bulk of your schools. If the kid is really excited about going to a school that requires a much higher academic level, then we say, sure, keep that school on the list, but it becomes your reach school. You can put 3, 4, or 5 schools into your reach school. As long as you're realistic, it's a reach, and you might not get there. And opposite to that, if the school is requiring less in terms of SAT and GPA, then it becomes your safety school. Why would a kid go to a safety school if he got accepted into a higher level school? Simple. Many safety schools are offering scholarships. They're offering money. They're offering free ride, maybe for the whole term of college, maybe partially. And all of a sudden it becomes attractive. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a girl, very bright girl, spoke several languages. She wanted to go to Berkeley. She applied to Berkeley. She was accepted in Berkeley. And she also applied to University of New Mexico. And these people started talking to her. The next thing she knows, they're offering her 2 years of free tuition and then full ride for all 4 years. And she came to me and she said, you know what? I thought nice and long about that. And I made up my mind. I'm going to University of New Mexico. When I'm done with that school, I would be debt free and I would end up in Berkeley in their School of Business, Haas School of Business. Regardless, that would be my dream. I would be debt free and I will get my master's degree there. So I thought that that was a very non-traditional, very creative approach. So she's not really compromising much. She's still focused on what she wants, but she lowered the bar and it felt right for her. It really has to feel right for you, for your child, and for you as a family in general. Factors to consider: average GPA, average SAT or ACT scores, if school is not test optional, and percentage of applicants accepted. Stanford would be in single digits. I think it's, what is that, 6%, 7% admission rate. So if your child is not there, it's important that you have a realistic conversation. What is reach and what happens if you don't get accepted into this school? Some don't strategize and they put 20 reach schools and then they get upset that they are not accepted. And basically it's one of the same school. It's the school that is asking way more than your student has on his transcript. A good resource that I think would be pretty informative, kind of overall, if you want to start exploring California schools, would be californiacolleges.edu. They have CSUs, UC, and private school information. This slide, it's kind of an approximation for you. That's how we usually work with kids. We tell kids they can listen or they can do whatever they want, but we encourage for them to have 2-3 schools that are reach. Reach means, again, roughly, very selective, up to 35% acceptance rate. 5 schools, the majority, and that's not often how it happens. Match schools and then safety schools would be good chances of getting in, 75 to 100% chances of admissions. Naviance, even though we're not using Naviance for college admission purposes, we're not submitting application through Naviance. It is still a good tool for your child. I really like Scattergram on Naviance. I like the comparative chart when your kid puts your GPA and his SAT or PSAT scores, and it compares him to schools of his interest. Parchment, by the way, has a fantastic college admission chances tools that would give you, when you enter all your academic information, they will tell you if the school is a reach, match, or a safety school for you. Again, this is not written in stone. That's an approximation, but that adds reality testing to a college search. So your kids are not frustrated if they don't get in and they have plan B. College application process, we used to do that in person. We call it red folder process. In normal times, we would go and present to all the seniors about the process. This time we did it virtually. We disseminated information through Google Classroom. So if you, when your child is a senior, everything, all the documents would be stored in Google Classroom under college application red folder. Forms that he would have to complete. These forms vary whether it's a state system or a private school. The child has to do his job, We really hope that he follows our deadlines. We're asking kids if they need a letter of recommendation from us for a private school to give us enough time to write that, not to wait till the last moment, because it would not be a quality letter. So when your child submits that folder, when he is done, then counselor gets this message and we set up a meeting with your child and we go over his college list and we try to break the schools into the categories that I talked about: reach, match, and safety. And we talk about deadlines, which schools require that first. And it's not uncommon that I'm talking to a kid and then he says, you know what, actually, after talking to you, I don't think that I want this school. This school is too far. This school is too small or too large. I really like this kind of a small school feel. Because when they're giving me their college search criteria that I want the smallest school, and on their application list, I see only UCs, and these are primarily big schools, then something is not adding up. And I start challenging them. So what is that you want? Do you want a bigger school or a smaller school? Do you want it hot and cold at the same time? And that's when they start thinking. And that's when this finalization of the process happens. And I think it's pretty productive when the kids realizes that's exactly what I need, or that was just kind of silly on my part to apply for that school. Anything else here? So when some kids apply to colleges for early admissions, then the deadline naturally would come sooner. And again, we would really appreciate if they respect that timeline, both for counselors and for their teachers. When teachers are writing a letter of recommendation, you have to realize it's outside of their job description. They're really doing that to help your child. So I tell kids, please respect deadlines. Give your teacher plenty of time. Notify him. Ask him in person. Again, so you can get a quality letter. And the last few slides would be devoted to college and career resources. Supermatch College Search. This is the tool that we used in previous years for our juniors. We were going to classes or virtually attending, doing class visits, and we were talking to kids about search criteria. If they don't do that, then they randomly pick random schools and apply to random majors. No one benefits from that. They might end up with a degree that nobody would use and being miserable in that school. So this is a really good tool, regardless whether we will continue using that or you still have access to Naviance and you can kind of talk with your child about this criteria. So when you plug all this criteria, based on that, they would be offering you selection of schools, and then you start breaking them up into reach, match, and safety. And that's when you take it to your senior year for the red folder process. I'm pretty much done with my piece. So we're open for your questions. Mr. LaFleur would help me answer them. And if we miss anything, feel free to follow up with the counselor, but don't freak out. Your kids are juniors and a bulk of work would be happening kind of towards the second semester of junior year and beginning of senior year.
All right. So Ms. Mekalova, great job. You were flying. Phenomenal. We had quite a few questions and I got them all answered. The one that a few people have brought up is Naviance. Every student that's been in Santa Clara Unified has a Naviance account, and we've made them go into it every year. Naviance is, they go to the Wilcox School Loop page, and Naviance is a button they click on there. And while we, like Ms. Mekalova said, we don't do the college applications in there anymore, there's a lot of great stuff in terms of college and career in there. And that's what we've been using it for over the past years, is college and career readiness. The only thing we stopped doing was using it for college apps. So you just go to the School Loop, and if the students can't remember how to get in, which happens, they should email their counselor, and their counselor can give them their login out for information. Oh, there's a question over here. Let's see this. Students don't get red folders as juniors. They get them in the first few weeks of their senior year. And so that is a key moment for students, because that's when they're going to get their list together. There was a question in the chat about like one-on-one meetings. Yes, every single student that turns in their red folder will have a one-on-one meeting with their counselor. And we want everybody to turn them in, community college or 4-year. But a lot of kids don't turn them in. All right, and see, yes. We will not send out a recording. It will be posted on a School Loop. Yeah, it will be posted in School Loop, in the counseling page. And now there's a lot of questions coming in. So as of today, this is a question that came up earlier. Wilcox is planning to offer the SAT in March at Wilcox. That's today. You know, with the CDC and COVID and the county health department, that might change. But I mean, literally, I was in the meeting today. We were discussing how we're going to give the SAT here in March. Let me see, I got a lot of questions. I did that one.
What is the best time for students to submit their folder? Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, great. Just right at the beginning of their senior year. The sooner they have their list together, the better. No. So somebody's asking, yeah, Wilcox, we do a school day SAT that is only open to Wilcox students, and we pay for it. So it's free. But you're not a site. We'll never be on the site. You'll just sign up with our principals. So we hope we get to offer it, but that's our plan. You will register through Wilcox. PSAT, we'll know in the next couple weeks if we're going to do that. We might be doing that in January, but don't quote me on that. ACT, we will not. We don't do the ACT at Wilcox. I like the ACT, but you would have to find an outside place. And I don't mean this as telling you to go do it. But there are places in California where you can take an ACT. You just have to travel, right? There's counties that are wide open because they don't have COVID, but they do have ACT tests. Okay, so I'm getting. Give me a second here. I'm consolidating SAT questions. So you cannot move your SAT venue to Wilcox if you've already signed up. Now you can. Ours will be in March, and it will be on a Wednesday. You can take two. That's fine, but they won't transfer that money to the one at Wilcox. And if you're going to take the March one at Wilcox, we will send out a link that you will sign up through us, and then we'll pay for it, right? So you don't have to do anything on that yet. Let me see here. Okay, the SAT, I'm hoping that we have an announcement on that in the next, I don't think it will be till after winter break when they see how this wave of COVID's going, but early in next year. Okay, let me see. Let me see here. No, we will not allow a 10th grader to take the school day SAT at Wilcox. Okay. AP exams are supposed to be normal old 3-hour AP exams this year. So that's what we're planning for. They're not supposed to be the short ones. I'll be honest, the scores were too high and the College Board is not happy. Our scores went through the roof. It was great for us. Yes, the March Wednesday SAT is on the same week as the Saturday SAT. And yes, a student can take both the Wednesday. I've had students do that. And then the other one at a different location. Yes, that's okay. Where can you find out which states? It wouldn't be which states require the SAT. It would be which colleges do. And you go to the college websites.
And the way you phrase that with the college, if you're inquiring, if you're talking to college reps, you're asking if your site or if your school is test optional. You can also Google test optional schools in a particular state, and it would give you a list of schools that are requiring and not requiring SATs or ACTs.
No, so the AP exams are in May. Right, we'll see about registration for the SAT. Again, I think we're going to have to wait until after winter break to see how COVID's going. I think if COVID's still going out of control, they'll cancel. Yes, it will get posted. So AP test results really don't impact a college application. They more impact your ability, like how much college can you get paid for by those scores. The AP scores, if you don't pass an AP class, the score is really a reflection on us as a school and how well we do the class. It's not really a reflection on the student. So that's, they don't really go. AP registration already happened based on what classes you signed up for. There are a lot of international colleges, not so much exchange programs. Individual colleges have exchange programs, but you'd have to look at the college. But there are a ton of international schools that kids go to, and I would just sit down with your counselor on that. I think we're all caught up. All right. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you all for coming. Unless there's more questions, have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a few more questions here. All right. Thank you.